Welcome, everybody. This is Love and Relo, the voice of the relocation industry. I am your host, Ben Cross, and I am joined by the marvelous Mr. Robert Maisel, cross cultural consultant, global mobility specialist, language expert, and a really cool, smart guy. How are you doing, Robert?
I'm good, Ben. Thanks so much for that introduction. A lot
It's
of
a
great
lot to
things
put on a
said.
business card, so don't you don't have to like go verbatim, but
All right, yeah, I don't know if I can fit all that on there.
Robert and I's, you guys, our path has crossed. We have mutual friends, and I've kind of admired some of the stuff that you're doing from a content perspective, putting yourself out there. I kind of reached out and kind of got to know you a little more, and it kind of turns out we have a lot of things in common. In fact, we actually went to the same college, and anybody that watches the show knows I'm a huge U Albany alum. And Robert went to U Albany also. What years did you go to Albany? And tell us a little bit about that experience.
Sure. Yeah, was super excited to learn that Ben is also a Great Dane.
Go Danes!
Oh, go Danes. '05 to '09. I was there doing my bachelor's in Spanish, minored in psychology and business, and I went on to do my MBA directly after from '09 to '11.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I left there in '05. I left, actually, little known fact, I left there 3 credits short of graduating, which is
Okay.
probably one of the dumbest things you can do. If you're going to do college, don't leave 3 credits short of graduating. But that's what I did. I fixed it later. But this is the portion of the show, What Not to Do by Ben Cross. So I did that, but I left in '05. And so we had, I guess, maybe a year of over. No, wait. You started in '05?
I started in '05. So
Fall of '05?
fall of '05, so we wouldn't have
No.
overlapped then because you graduated in spring of '05.
I graduated spring of '05, and I did a little summer action, and then that was it. And then my neighbor loves doing his yard right when I start doing a show. My neighbor Jim, bless
It
his
gives
heart.
it gives the show some character, Ben.
It doesn't it? Yeah,
It's
little
got
power
character,
tools. Yeah,
but power tools give this show even more character, especially
yeah.
this episode.
I'm gonna. I hate this guy so much. I'm gonna hold on one second. I'm gonna close my window here. Okay, hold on.
Sure, sure. So for everyone waiting for Ben to get back, don't worry. I did the 3 credits that he was missing. I
All
more
right,
than made up
I
with Ben. I
am
was just
back. Let's see here. We got some folks checking in here. If you're watching on LinkedIn, you're watching on Facebook, go ahead and drop a comment. Let me know where in the world you are. Let me know what company you work for. Say something awesome. Give me the weather. Give me an update. I want to know how you're doing. As you know, this is a dialogue. I'm watching myself walk away. I'm like on a bit of a lag here. Mark Moose, bonjour and guten Tag von Schweiz, lieb und Relo von MW Relo. I don't know why I just said that, but hey, that's how it is. Lynn Greenberg, hi, Ben, and former Bloomberg colleague Robert.
hey, Lynn.
So you guys actually worked at Bloomberg together?
At different points in time and to different capacities, but yes, we did.
You're like the Kevin Bacon of relocation. You're connected to everybody.
I know a few people, Ben.
You're going to know a lot more after this show here. And everybody, if
That's
you're
good.
watching this right now and you're not connected to Robert, connect with him. Swell guy. Mark
Please
Moose,
do.
Jim's a
Happy.
nice guy. Jim, my neighbor. Don't even get me started on Jim. I'm gonna have a whole episode about Jim, okay? Because me and Jim do not get along. Because there's very few people in this world I do not get along with, and Jim, my neighbor, is one of them. Jane Woolston, hi Robert, howdy from Jane Woolston, Double Oak, Texas. Guys, hit that applause button, hit that heart button. Let me know you're out there. Let's see what's going on in the book here. Let's see. This guy commented. Yeah, he seems like a nice guy.
Oh man.
Jamie Massler, hi Ben and Robert. Cheers from very sunny Mississippi.
Hey Jamie, thanks for checking
Jamie,
in.
Jamie the weatherman. Also played defensive tackle in college. A lot of people don't know that. Jamie actually dropped 60 pounds from his defensive tackle days in college. I added more than that from my college days. Jason Rollins checking in. Hi Ben and Robert. Let's see here. We got our mutual friend Nicole Barilli.
Oh, we got a little Portuguese from Nicole. Oi, Nicole to the Bane.
Awesome. So you oh, Janet Turner asked, "Does Robert watch The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel?"
It's funny because Ben and I were chatting a little bit about this, and no, but I feel like now I should, so I'll have to get on that.
And I confirm there's no relation, even though I think it's a fictional character. I'm not sure. Angela Passman in Dallas, great job you guys are doing here. Hey, thanks, Angela. We haven't done anything yet, so, but I appreciate the optimism. Mena Elsfori, hello, Robert. This is Mena from Dubai.
Hey, Mena.
Paul Vaughn, have a great day from Norfolk, Virginia. Janaina from Brazil, hello. Mary O'Donnell, hi, Ben from SoCal. People are just checking in. I love it. This is great. Nicole is going to be my co-host tomorrow for Mobility Jeopardy. It looks like people are checking in right now. We've got a nice little audience going here on LinkedIn and on Facebook. So let's hop into it. One
Let's
of the
do it.
things that when we first started talking was you started your, well, tell me about how you started your mobility career. Kind of give me your journey because you have a very interesting story.
Sure. So, taking a bunch of extended trips all around different regions of the world, knew I love travel, cultures, languages, mobility, people movement in general. Um, my travels would end up taking me to Japan, lived there for a few years, teaching English, and upon my return, um, began arranging cross-cultural trainings for employees relocating abroad, and sort of then started to get into the mobility space. Yeah, and then started thinking about where to move from there. Ultimately, after that, would
I'm gonna
go
stop.
on
I'm
to
gonna
take
stop you
Ben's
because you
question.
mentioned one thing early on. You're like, I just loved people and the idea of being, global and everything. What was it about that initially, before you had even really understood what it was, that attracted you to it?
Just about people or about
People and
mobility.
traveling and the globalization of it all.
Ben, I've always found it fascinating just learning about people from different backgrounds, different cultures, and I really found that the best way, I mean, even though New York, especially New York City, is such a global place, I found that the real best way for me to understand more about the world was to get myself out of my chair, into a car, van, bus, or airplane, and physically get there and meet these people that I wanted to know about.
You know what I've learned from meeting so many interesting people is that the most interesting people are interested. They're curious people by nature. And I think that's something that you and I also have in common. And another reason why I was attracted to you when we first started talking is that you seem like you're curious by nature as well. And obviously, that's what I do every day is I try to discover things about people. So you had this curiosity inside you. You started to go. You went to Japan. You taught English, and then what happened?
And then came back to New York and hopped on board with a company called DwellWorks, which and was arranging cross-cultural trainings for employees who were relocating, from one office to another. Um, and loved it, of course. We had a great team, learned a lot, and was really excited about the challenges that we had, um, and really just excited to delve into the cross-cultural element of things. It's really exciting.
What'd you do at DwellWorks?
So it was arranging the cross-cultural trainings for employees who were moving from one office to a new office, generally internationally rather.
Okay. All right. And then after that, what was your next stop in your mobility journey?
Sure. After that, went on to work with Bloomberg.
Okay, what'd you do there?
So at Bloomberg was looking at the relocation process as a whole, providing recommendations how we could improve, analyzing the movement of the people. A lot of interesting things going on there, different projects. Yeah, a lot
So
of
you would
interesting
be
things
what
going on.
we would kind of term like on the corporate side. You worked
Ex-
for the client side of it.
exactly, Ben, and that's part of the interesting part of the journey I've had is I kind of went from the vendor side with the cross cultural services, moving to the client side, so understanding both sides of the coin, if you will.
So you were vendor side as a service provider for DwellWorks, then you go to Bloomberg, you see it from that side. What did you learn about the differences? Because I got to imagine that's very different. I mean, different perspectives. Obviously, two sides of the coin there.
Absolutely, that's a great question, Ben. So, working with DwellWorks, just learned. A lot about just the cross-cultural industry trends that were happening. We started to see, this was years ago, we started to see that there was a big push toward virtual, which is interesting in the time we're in now and what we see going on. And and it's interesting because customer service was always paramount, because you're working for the client, right? But you would expect, potentially when you go to the client side, maybe less focus on customer service and, maybe the client is more demanding. But at Bloomberg, I learned such an insanely high level of customer service as well, because just internal folks were my stakeholders. And it was a humbling and an incredibly rewarding experience.
Was it harder working on the client side than on the service provider side?
You know, they both definitely pose their own challenges. Um,
And you can be honest. I mean,
yeah.
neither Michael Bloomberg nor Bob Rosing are watching this program right now, so you can be completely honest.
Well, I would say this, that in terms of pace, um, there's always ebb and flow, but the pace at Bloomberg was very fast. So it was very challenging at first to get accustomed to how quickly things moved and maintaining that intensely high level of customer service.
So you mentioned in our talks like understanding the importance of cross cultural training and that really coming into focus when you were at Bloomberg and working in their mobility program. Um, and through some of your world travels, like, can you give us like kind of some stories or some examples that kind of illustrate that importance for us? Because I think cross and the reason I ask, I'm gonna just you know couch this with, I think cross cultural training or intercultural training, and I'm using them synonymously, and I don't know if they are, so you got to correct me, right? I think that's one of the more overlooked benefits in the relocation process. I think I've even heard stories that a lot of people that are even extended this benefit don't always even exercise it, even take advantage of it. And I've heard that there are second order effects from that maybe they're not as successful in their assignments, or maybe they don't have the success in their job because they don't relate as well to their coworkers. I mean, can you kind of illustrate some of the benefits of that service?
Absolutely, Ben. And thanks so much for touching on that, because I completely agree. And when I got into the industry, I was floored just at how overlooked this benefit is, because I've always thought and realized and known through my experiences the value of this and the problem which occurs when this service is not offered. So totally agreed on that point. And I think now we're starting to really see that happen. Let me give you, wanted an example. I'll give you a good one.
Hit me.
Let's Are you ready for this? Because I'm gonna
I'm
hit you
ready
hard.
for it.
I'm gonna hit you hard. You ready? Here we go, brother. It's coming in. So we're gonna talk about real deal. Rob arrives in Japan. Rob didn't have cross cultural training. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Rob gets to Tokyo. Thought he knows what he's doing, but at day-to-day interactions, Ben, we're talking about just things as basic as making friends, and we're talking about interactions with, hey, would you like to do something, right? Would you like to go to the movies, right? And we're getting three different interactions. I'm getting responses like, right?
Yeah.
From Japanese folks. I'm getting other interactions like slight hesitation, and I'm getting one that's like a concerned hesitation. Okay, my American background would tell me, well, I mean, all those are like potentially yes.
Those are all yeses to me.
Yeah, right. Well, guess what, Ben? They are absolutely not all yeses in Japan. It's so far from it, and it's fascinating because
So how many of those three were yeses and how many were not?
none of them were guaranteed yeses. P.S.
None of them were. So you could be standing
0%.
outside the movies waiting for the guy that says, and then you're not even. He's not even to be there.
Right. But what I will say is that like the super excited one, there's a good chance that that's yes. The slight hesitation is 99% no. And the one with the extreme hesitation, concern, is like, oh, beep to the beep, no.
You're so funny. Oh my gosh! All right, we got some people checking in here as well, and I want to continue to stay on this in this vein here.
Let's do it.
Also, if you have questions, Robert has been to how many countries have you been to?
50, Ben.
50 countries, which is just mind boggling. 50 countries. And so, if you have questions about that experience or about his experience at Bloomberg, or a question about U Albany Great Danes basketball 0506, you just let us know. We've got questions coming in. We got some comments here. I want to hear those and make this an interactive discussion as well. We've got people coming in. Sandra Clary, hi all, looking for some nuggets of wisdom today. Happy Thursday. All right, no pressure. All right, cool. Soledad Aguirre, Olaf from Madrid. This show is becoming addictive. Well,
Hola.
that's a great compliment. Angela Passman, totally agree. It can be a difference in success or failure based on my own personal experience years ago. Yeah, Angela. I mean, I'd love to know more about that. Angela Passman, CEO, World Pet Travel. What was that experience that you had, and what do you see the the difference maker being with the cross cultural? I'd love to hear that. Mena El Safori, let us admit, with the globalization and social media nowadays, your mission as cross cultural consultant has been changed a lot as people are more aware of different culture. How does this change your role? That's a great question. So she says, let us admit, with the globalization and social media nowadays, your mission as cross cultural consultant has been changed a lot as people are more aware of different culture. As people are more aware of different cultures, how does that change your role? So first, the premise is that with social media, there's more awareness of different cultures.
Right.
Do you find that or not?
I think we could see that because there is a lot more exposure with the internet now. It's so booming in this day and age, right? People do have access to people that they might never interact and might never have been able to interact with otherwise, right? So I definitely think we are more exposed as a world to different cultures now. I would agree. I would agree with that premise.
Okay, because you can, I mean, and you can Google stuff and you can go on YouTube
Correct.
and that as well, right?
Hmm.
And then she's saying, how has that changed your role or the role of the cross cultural consultant?
Right. And I think that's a good one. I think because this information is more sort of widely available, um, it's interesting because it can be tricky because people have exposure to these new cultures and these new people. Um, but I think the core premise of having an understanding of them still stands. So I think that it may be
Yeah.
easier for us to interact with them, but still having the training to understand some of the core principles about themselves, about the culture that they're going to, and about some of the cultural dimensions that may make what they're
There's a
used to
lot of
different from.
nuance, right? I mean,
Correct.
and this is Nicole's point. Is she's like, I still want to chime into that question. So here you are, Nicole.
Hmm.
People are more aware of surface culture, not the cultural values, and I think
Right.
that's what you're talking about.
Right.
And it's almost like that saying, I know enough to be dangerous. Well, the reason you know enough to be dangerous is because you think you know a lot, but you know enough to get yourself into trouble because you think you know, but you don't really know. And it's
Right.
the nuance that's lost and where the expertise comes in, I think, is what Nicole's saying and what you're saying.
Exactly.
So you can almost get yourself in a little bit of a pickle because you go on YouTube, you watch a video about how to conduct yourself in Japan. You think you know, but there's so many subtleties that just take years of experience, probably, in professional coaching.
Uh, Totally. And I thought to myself, if I had like a cross cultural training, even if it were half day, 1 day, 2 day, whatever it would, it could have alleviated some of the struggles that took me 3 years. Literally 3 years, I was having aha moments, like getting hit in the face with these aha moments from time to
I want
time.
to, I want to, I want to hit me in the face again. Tell me another story. Give me another example of moments that you've experienced. Because I mean, again, you've been in 50 countries, so you have all these cultures. I mean, we even know in the United States, and we've touched on this program numerous times. Even in the United States, there's probably, depending on who you ask, I mean, 2 to 10 different cultures in the United States. 50 countries. I mean, you must have run into a lot of aha moments.
Yeah. Trying to think where to pull from. I mean, there's so much. There's so much there. um, India was interesting. Let's talk a little bit about India. And
Let's.
let's talk a little bit about this, man. Do you know what this means?
Oh yeah, the Indian head nod, like the head waggle or whatever it's called.
Because I came away from that and I still don't have a solid understanding of what that means. But I'll tell you something. What I understood from it is that it was regional. So folks in the South, my understanding was tended to bobble around a little bit just when they were happy. I saw people using it aggressively when arguing, like, with one another. I received it at times when, I confronted someone about a price that seemed to be a little bit exorbitant, almost like an okay, you're right, I'm sorry for doing that kind of deal. So the context was huge. You found it in so many different situations.
So it's like the F word, right? It really could mean anything you
It's
want
kind of
it to
like the
mean.
Indian F word. The Indian
It's
head bobble could be, yeah.
well, and I first ran into that actually over here at my previous company when I was talking to somebody. It was the summer, and in the moving industry, the summer's so crazy, and you don't know, your head's spinning. To use that analogy. And I'm talking to the I'm talking to the IT director if he can program something for me. I'm having an issue, and he's like, "Do you want to like this?" And I'm just like, and he's like, "Did you just like Indian head? What is it called? Indian what do they call
I
it?
would call it the head bobble,
The
but
head bob?
if
Did
you
you like Indian head bobble me?" And I'm like, "I don't even know. I just need some help."
while you're doing the bobble.
Because yeah, anyway. So that's when I learned about it, and then I started to like look it up on YouTube, right? Again, enough to get me in trouble probably, right? If I go to India and I start doing it, in the marketplace or a restaurant or in a business meeting. But yeah, so that caught you off guard, so you didn't know how to interpret that.
No, and I was sort of thinking, oh, what does that mean? And like I said, I came to realize that with my experience with that, it was more contextual. It was based on the region, the interaction, and the conversation and what they were trying to get across.
Interesting. It's so interesting how much subtext there is in our interactions and in our language. And yes, there's language, and then there's body language, but then there's like this contextual stuff that I guess is culture, and I guess that's the role of culture, right? And we got a comment from Andrew Bruzy here. Entirely agree. Access to people and access to knowledge can connect us as long as we take the time to understand and adapt. Francine Dresty goes on to say that is so interesting. The Indian head bobble I understood to be that they were still processing the information.
And that could totally be true too. And it's a fascinating thing that just has so many potential meanings to it.
So, so, so you're in India. You're learning this. You go to Japan. What are some of the other countries you went to, and some of the other interesting cultural things that you pulled out before we talk about kind of like what you're doing today? But I still want to stay on this because I'm fascinated by 50 countries. I mean, I've been
Sure.
to Canada. Yeah, I was born in the U.S. I was told the United Nations wasn't a part of the U.S. on a field trip, so I don't know if I was in another country or not. But I definitely left the U.S. Apparently, I was in the Bahamas. Puerto Rico's a Commonwealth. Yeah, so I don't have much. I mean, I got three probably under my belt. I mean, I'm really probably making myself look pretty bad on this global mobility show, but I mean, that's one of my aspirations is to travel and hopefully even maybe do a trip to Asia this fall, where I can actually take this Love and Relo show on the road, which would be super cool. But tell me about some of the countries you went to and some of the things that you learned, in that process.
Sure. So Brazil is another country I've been to numerous times. It holds a special place in my heart because actually during my MBA, Ben, I had a classmate who was Brazilian, and I still remember he goes, "Dude, you should go to Brazil." And I said, "Hey, man, I'm going." So what did I do? I
Yeah.
flew. I flew to Brazil. Um, the first time I think was during Carnival. No, the first time was not. The second time was during Carnival. But what was fascinating was I didn't stay in a hotel. I stayed with my classmates' family, and I stayed in the house with them, and
Nice.
and I was really able to understand like the true warmth and family kind of welcoming part of Brazilian culture. Just amazing. And I would essentially go on to learn Portuguese. I had done a couple like online classes, or well, it was a language exchange before I went. But really, what hammered it home was like my fascination with these friendly people and this amazing like samba music and bossa nova. I expanded my musical repertoire times three at least, and really was motivated to learn so much more because of how warm the people were. And my friends' family speaks no English, so I really didn't have a choice if I wanted to communicate with them.
You had to learn Portuguese.
It was that or nothing.
So Viva Van Bakel says, great conversation. Love to see the fun in the conversation. Culture is key. I think what you're talking about, the love, and you experience that with the people. Do you experience that in every country you go to?
That's a great question, Ben. I would say yes, and I'm going to tie language in here because I think it's relevant. I would say that we see it, but I think the reason I've been able to see it is because I'm the type of traveler, as you noted before, who's curious, and I want to know more about people. So I've found that by speaking to them in their native tongue, oh man, you unlock a whole new level of communication that you didn't even know was there. And I think whether it's even just a few words or a phrase, or for example, in the idea of going to Colombia, being fluent in Spanish and being able to have a full on conversation, people have respect for that. People have love for that in this world. And when they find someone who is dedicating at least a little bit of their time before their travel and during their travel to speaking their language and better understanding them as a person, as a culture, as a country, that is huge, Ben.
So is it better to? Here's my baby. Is it better to go to the country, speak the language poorly, or go to the country and speak your native language, English? Let's just say English. Um, in your opinion, from an experience standpoint.
Great question, Ben. Solid viewpoint on this one. It is worlds better to go to the country you're going to and butcher the crap out of that language because they will respect you so much more
Right.
for trying, because the majority of folks go there and just speak English. But if they see there's a twinkle, that I'm telling you, man, you're going to see the glow in their eyes.
Yeah.
It-
I
insane.
totally get that, right? Because and that's kind of like the problem that Americans get a knock on them, right? Because we go everywhere and we just want to speak English, right?
That's right.
And we just assume that, hey, this is the predominant language. We speak English, whatever. And I think that's part of the arrogant American kind of persona that people have in mind, right? And so to your point, when you try to go there and try to understand their language, their culture, I saw it before, and being in New York and stuff, and having a lot of friends who were Colombian, Dominican, Mexican, Puerto Rican, and when I go to their home and I speak to their mothers, in Spanish, or I'm at work, and I'm speaking to the other guys I'm working with in Spanish. To your point, they accepted me more like one of their own, and the experience was a lot better as well.
And it's so cool to hear that, Ben. And I think part of that is because they have respect for you, that you're learning their language. They have respect for you because you're curious about learning more about them and their culture. And then there's just sort of the psychological or linguistic aspect of it, that hey, they don't have to worry about translating their thoughts or ideas into another language. So what they're telling you is coming from the heart and it's genuine.
Yeah, it's not filtered with that whole. Let
Right.
me try to interpret this for him. Okay, we got some great comments coming in here. Oh, look at that. Nicole says Rob is one of the most positive and motivational people I know. Curious his thoughts on motivation across cultures. Thoughts on motivation across cultures?
Nicole, thank you so much. That's very kind of you. Um, sure. So I think motivation is really a key driving force to success across cultures, across any culture, really, right? And I think that's a fascinating question, Nicole, right? Because different cultures, I think we can break it down on a lot of levels, like your personal culture, like your individual personality, company culture, national culture. I think the key here is finding out what makes you tick, what makes the company tick, what makes that country tick, and sort of tailoring our response to that, right? So if I know that what's going to motivate me is feeling great value out of what I do, I'm going to make sure that the roles that I enter are toward my mission. The companies that I work for are following that mission, and I feel that the country that I'm in is, moving toward that mission if possible as well.
So I'm gonna guess though that also motivating people has to do also with what those people's values are, right?
Yeah.
And what little I know about cultures across cultures is that value sets can be different, right? And it's like some of them, like how you value time, right, and how you value friendships and family and work and where those fall in that pecking order, how you value face and prestige, things like that, right? And so I imagine that motivating people has a lot to do with that. It was funny to me, little object lesson for me. I was I was on a happy hour, an International Association of Movers happy hour, like just 2 weeks ago or whatever, right? And we had people from all over. We had people from Spain, and we had people from the Netherlands, and we had people from just tons of countries. There's probably 50 something people on this happy hour, right? And and I get on this call. I get on this call, and it's like 1 o'clock, you know, Eastern Standard Time here in the U.S. And it's, gosh, probably like 7 o'clock there, right? In Europe where they're running this, and it's like 10 after the hour, and they're like, okay, we still got some people coming in now. There's like 50 people on the call. Like, should we wait another 10 minutes to see if anybody else joins? And I'm like, guys, we're already 10 minutes late to this call. Like, TikTok, I got stuff going on today. And they wanted to wait till like 1:20 to get the party started. I'm like, guys, this is crazy. So I just found it so interesting. That was my experience, to like being in the same virtual room with people from all over the globe, and nobody could decide on what time to start. Because you have some people that want to be prompt, you have some people that 10 minutes after, some people that 20, 30 minutes after is just fine. And it was so interesting to me, the difference in the concept of time across cultures. You've been to 50 countries. How is the concept of time different in all those countries?
That's a great question. Just to sort of talk a little bit about your experience, Ben. It's fascinating because I think it has to do with the concept of time. It also has to. I think it also plays into task versus relationship. A task oriented, a more task oriented culture. Let's say like the U.S. You're thinking, man, time is money. I got 10 minutes. I'm 10 minutes late. I just lost $10, 10 million bucks.
I got a hard
whatever
stop thinking. I got a hard stop at 2.
And other countries, people from other countries and cultures are thinking, hey, I'm not trying to get this party started till everyone's here, because I want to preserve those relationships. I want to make sure everybody is a part of this call. Yes. I want to make sure, that and save face. I don't want to do anything. I don't want to say anything, or potentially, have somebody miss something important. So there's different things. But to your
and the irony was, the longer they waited, people were actually leaving the call because they were like, I don't think this is ever going to start. They're waiting for like one more person or two more people to join, and like people were actually leaving. I thought that was funny. He's probably one of the guys probably watching this right now, probably like cussing me out in Dutch. But go.
Sorry, I was going to take a moment to acknowledge that. That was awesome. So to your question about time, cultures definitely view it differently. And for example, some of my Brazilian friends, there's no issue really in showing up a few minutes late to a gathering, or even 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Whereas, let's say here, or like in Germany, right? That's a very punctual, for the most part, a very punctual place. So people are going to be on time, and it's going to come down to values too. So oftentimes a Brazilian person might value a connection or a relationship more. So if they happen to kind of go over in time with a conversation with someone they really have a strong connection with, went a little bit over, they might be late to see you.
Yeah, I've heard stories where people have been kept waiting for a dinner for 2 hours in a lobby in Brazil. The person was supposed to meet at 7, they show up at 9. I'm like, what? Like, plus I'd be hangry as all get out. Like I would like, I'd probably, it'd be bad.
And you know what the important thing always to do in these situations, which is difficult for us, is to assess it from both angles, multiple if possible, but to think of it from their perspective and try to understand why was this person 2 hours late. Our first gut reaction to be like, is that's crazy why this person made me wait 2 hours? I'm hangry. I'm going to tackle them when I get there.
Yeah, or I've been drinking for 2 hours at the hotel bar, and I've had like
Yeah.
8 caipirinhas,
You're ready to
and
sleep.
who knows what I'm going to say, right?
But to try to
Um,
understand why they might be, what they're thinking about in the interaction.
yeah, we've got so many people chiming in here, and let's see here. I want to get to everybody here. Mena Elsafori says, to what extent the cross-cultural training is successful and can adapt the employee to the culture? What are the evaluation tools to assess this? Great question. So her questions are revolving around evaluation tools and how do you assess the success maybe of the cultural training.
Sure. Let me talk a little bit about my experience with dwell work. So after an assignee would have just for terminology, assignee was referring to the employee who is relocating. So after the employee had their training with the cross-cultural trainer, there would usually be an evaluation form sent out, which would ask certain questions about what did you think about the performance, what did you learn, this and that. There was a rating scale to understand the value that they found from the training. So at least that's how when I was there, it seemed to be that DwellWorks was measuring the
So
success of
they would measure like satisfaction. Is there
yes.
like a test for like competency and like how culturally fluent they are at the end of the training?
Yeah, Ben, that's an awesome question, and
Like a
that's something
multiple
that
choice. Do I bow, kneel, or kiss them on the cheek if they say this?
I don't believe there is. I'm not aware of any cross cultural training programs that have something like that. But I think a check in at the end of the training, just with some key things like that, would be
Maybe
helpful.
you just, what you do? You just drop them off in a bad neighborhood and see how they do.
I think that's exactly what you do. But you
Immersion
provide them with some
training.
sort of some sort of bodyguards and everything, just in case things get out of hand.
Yeah.
And I think you've involuntarily just applied for that role by suggesting that idea.
I'll drive you to a bad neighborhood. I'll drop you off. And if you make it back in 15 minutes, you've passed.
You're good. You're culturally
Yvonne
informed.
David, for me, it has been trickier when working within cultures where I assumed to be familiar with the culture. Working in Pakistan, I knew I was, quote, illiterate, but working in the US, I thought the English language was all I needed to be successful. That's so interesting. Because they're
Fascinating.
talking about the difficulty, she's talking about the difficulty assimilating maybe into the culture of the United States, which we obviously probably take for granted.
Absolutely.
You see people with challenges with the U.S. culture?
Oh
What
yeah.
are some of the challenges you see with U.S. culture?
Um, there can be many. Well, let's take, for example, a Japanese person coming to the U.S. for the first time. They tend to be more reserved, sort of a more of a group mindset, not making decisions on their own. So when you come into the U.S., where you're expected to be an individual with strong values and make hard decisions, and then wow. So that's like a huge cultural adjustment, and that's sort of an extreme example, Ben. Um, but I think that's one that hits on a good point.
Yeah. As you're telling me this, I hear my son's like, Mom, I think I pooped my pants. I'm like, yes, these are cultural issues. Jana Masick says, I love this conversation. Communication is key. Katie Katie Linehan says, I think my kid's having a cultural problem right now in this household. We don't do that, but he's having a cultural issue. Cultural awareness is key. Katie Linehan says, not nearly 50 countries in my travels, but many and always enjoyed the pre-trip read to ensure basic understanding of business acumen, especially as an outspoken female. Okay, a couple of things here I want to unpack. Pre-trip read to ensure basic understanding of business acumen. What is your minimum prerequisite for going to another country? What do you recommend? Quick tips.
Quick tips. if you're very limited for time, and you're not going to arrange a cross-cultural train, ideally arrange a cross-cultural training. But if you're not going to have time for that, or you're just going for a couple days for a trip, at least do your research. Check out some resources online. You check out a bunch of different sources. I'm the type that really likes to aggregate different I don't know, a few different sources to come to different conclusions. But do your background research on the country. Understand a little bit about what makes them tick, some of the cultural norms, what to do, what not to do, maybe what topics of conversation they really like to engage
So,
in, what they don't.
yeah. So is it common or available to just like, Jane Doe who's going to Germany to get a cross cultural session for her own personal travel? I mean, do people do that?
That's a great question. To my knowledge, I haven't really heard of people doing that. I think there's value in that,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure. I'm not sure whether people would go.
Well,
Go
and
go
this
ahead.
actually goes into something else we've talked about travel coaching, and I want to hear your
Yes,
thoughts on this as well. But I
sure.
know, I want to go to Asia. Scares my wife to death. Okay, if I could get her with somebody who's done it, who can make her feel like she has a handle on the challenges and how to navigate that, maybe I could pull that off. So that could really be of help. For me actually. And you know what? That actually leads us to our audience poll. Audience poll. If you were going on the trip of a lifetime, so if you're listening to this right now, and I see 24 of you on LinkedIn, I see another dozen or so on Facebook. I want you to stop what you're doing, and I want you to answer this audience poll. All you have to do is go into the comments and type the answer in, and then hit enter. Okay. Audience poll. If you were going on the trip of a lifetime and you could have help with one thing, what would it be? Do, 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 do. Okay, so just go ahead and enter that. We're going to talk a little bit more about this, and I want to also hear what you have to say regarding. But so currently today, Robert, it sounds like you're saying not really done, but you could see a value in that. I mean, talk a little bit
Right.
about your ideas around that.
Sure. I mean, I just from having seen so many cultures and interacted with them through traveling to so many places, I've just really understood the value of someone giving me the lowdown, if you will, and saving me the time and hassle of and making these mistakes and blunders, potentially embarrassing myself or whatever. But I think it's also going to depend on how long are you going for? What's the intention of the trip? So I would say that someone who's going for like a long weekend may not want to invest the time and the money in a cultural training if they're going, let's say, to like Hong Kong for a long weekend or something, right? I think there's value there, but I don't know if it would make sense to most people to, especially if it were a paid service. I don't know if.
Yeah. But I mean, if somebody's taking like a week long European vacation or a week long Asian vacation, is there something that, I mean, we talk about like travel coaching. What's the purpose of that? I mean, that was something that came out of our conversation that I'd love for you to explore that idea and what that is.
Sure. So what's fascinating is that COVID situation has really allowed everybody, I think, to take a deep dive into their values and assess the current situation we're in. And I myself have definitely done that. Um, and I think it's given a lot of travelers um, the opportunity to look at the way they were traveling, myself included, and assess that. And I think what I found a lot of people thinking and saying was that prior to COVID, a lot of folks were looking to go places to check boxes. You want to see the Eiffel Tower. You want to go to Machu Picchu. You want to
I
do
want
these
to I
things.
want to get that picture in front of the Leaning Tower of Pisa, holding it up or something, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I think Ben, with the situation that we have now, people are looking at it on a deeper level, and I think people are starting to see the value of what they value in life and what they want to get out of their trips, how they can travel intentionally, how they can add meaning, strengthen relationships, learn more about themselves, learn more
Yeah.
about them, their environment. I think
Right.
that is where we're going to see the shift in the
Yeah,
intention to
and we're
travel.
getting some really great people checking in here. I'm just going to go down the around the horn here and kind of read off these answers so we get a vibe. And by the way, if you're watching this right now, go ahead and hit that heart button. Is this a heart? Kind of, sort of, maybe. I got to work on my heart.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, is this good? Did I Bieber it up? All right, hit that
Yeah.
heart button for Love and Relo. I want to see them like they flutter up from the bottom. It's great. So Christian Hooferloo says understanding the local culture is what he would like. Jane Woolston says a local guide. Mary Smith says language. Pedacita says language. Soledad says enhance your sense of humor. I like that actually. That's a very interesting answer because humor varies across cultures quite a bit. I wonder if you could
Totally.
like take a humor course, like a cultural humor course.
That
What
would
to
be
say, what
great.
not to say.
Right.
Shirley Seifert says local guide.
Okay.
Yvonne David says deeper understanding of the culture of the region. Jim Barber, my buddy, find out where the locals go.
Hmm.
Francine Dresti says language. We got some people on Facebook as well. Let's see here. Janet says she'd like to understand the food. A lot of people about the food. A lot of people with the local guide. I think, what is it about the local guide? Is it somebody like is going to keep you out of trouble, like curate the experience for you, but also keep you safe?
I think a little bit of all of that, Ben, and I think another big piece of it is the ingrained knowledge, right? So understanding that you are hiring someone who's from there, um, either was born there or moved there after a certain amount of time and has spent a significant amount of time there, so you can trust that this person really knows the ins and the outs. And I'd almost, my first thinking is almost to think about like a DSP, like a destination services provider, just like no in the real. If I'm going to relate it to the relo industry, it's like
Right.
somebody who really knows the local area, can show you where to find food and what to do. I mean,
Yeah.
DSP is more of an administrative level, but this is more, yeah,
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I was thinking was DSP, like a DSP for travel. Like
right.
I go there and I know that this person, like Aaron Flores says, Anthony Bourdain style of getting to know a culture. I mean, if you notice on that show, Anthony Bourdain, he goes, or he used to, rest in peace, Anthony Bourdain, used to go to countries and he would link up with a guide who he either knew from his cooking and travels or whatever previously, or saw a friend of a friend, and that person like knew all the spots. He knew all the little restaurants or street stalls with food in them and bars, and he would take you out on a fishing boat and you catch a sea urchin and crack it open and suck it out or something right on the canoe or something. I don't know. I'm just making stuff up. But that was what he would do, and I think that is like the coolest travel experience. And to your point, if you had in every city or country or whatever, or certain amount, one, two, three, four people like that who could just run guided tours and get to know the people and say, oh, you really like food? Let me show you some food. Oh, you really like art? Oh, let me show you the art. And then
There's
if they're
value in
getting
that.
through the art, they're going through the art tour and they're like, okay, this is a lot of art. Now let's get on with the food. Okay, pivot. All right, let's go to the food tour. And anyway, I'm getting excited now. I want to go on go on a vacation like this.
I think a lot of people are. I think we're going to see. I think we're going to see a real boom once things start opening up. I think Ben, it's going to be more domestic at first because travelers are going to be confused about some of the regulations and which countries are allowing folks to come in and come out. But as things start to ease up, I do think domestic will probably open up first. I think we're going to see. Open spaces as places people may flock to, more national parks, potential road trips, things where people can exercise their own freedom to get out and do it. I think that might be the first part of travel that opens up as international travel slowly opens up as well.
Yeah, that'd be interesting too. Doing a road trip with someone that lives in that country,
Oh yeah,
like going over to a country, hopping in a car and saying, okay, I have a general idea of where I want to go, you're going to take me there, and then you're also going to suggest things along the way, maybe. And yeah, anyway.
No, but I agree completely because at the end of the day, Ben, I think that I feel so fortunate to have had so many amazing travel experiences, and what it really boils down to is that these experiences have been so amazing because of the people I have met, the concepts they have introduced me to, the food I have tried, the places I have gone, and it is all linked into culture. And having these local connections to go and show you these things, there's just so much more value in traveling like that than potentially just locking yourself in a hotel, going out for dinner, sort of doing what you would at home. I think really stretching your comfort zone is so important.
I agree, and I'd probably be the type of person that would end up going to a country and doing what I would do at home, but doing it there. And to your point, you're missing so much, and everybody's going kind of crazy in the comments here with all sorts of ideas and stuff. Nicole really says a private food tour, you can understand so much about a culture through food. I think that's interesting too. I mean, how about a cooking class in that
Yep.
country in a home? With somebody's like with a mom or a grandma, who's like whipping up. Like if I went to Italy and I got to go do a cooking class with a nonna, who's making, pasta from scratch. I mean, that's just and I'm on a vineyard with they're making the wine and they bring it in and the kids are underfoot and it's just like you get this experience, immersive familial experience. Oh,
It's
I'm
really
excited.
no, it's really amazing. And you know what? I'm thinking about that, and I recently heard about a book called Masala Mamas, and it was produced basically from like local. I think it's a vegan cookbook actually, and it's definitely vegetarian. It may be vegan, and it's all about local recipes. And so I think it's so cool. Actually, my aunt shared that with me. She's the one I'm working with, writing my book, and
Oh, cool.
yeah, so I think that the concept of what you're saying is really like getting in there, finding out about the local culture through a cooking class or through something authentic. And for folks like we can't right now, so picking up a book and learning about it that way for the time being until we can actually get over to India and get into their homes with their permission, of
Mm-hmm.
course, right? We're going to need the bodyguard again, Ben. We're going to need you.
Let's see here. Christian Hufalo on LinkedIn says, if seeing only the sights of a destination is your idea of quote travel, I'm afraid you're doing it wrong. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. But I think, I mean, we know what we see. We see pictures of the Eiffel Tower. We want to go see pictures of the Eiffel Tower. You can't see the experience in the relationships. It's harder to put that in an Instagram post, right? So
Totally.
that's not what's shown, but that's what's important, right? Francine Francine says, "What are your thoughts? Is most important to try to learn the language, culture, or local environment? What are your thoughts? Language, culture, or local environment?"
Ooh, that's a tough one. Um, It's really a combination of all three because I think they really combine. I think that you can learn a fair amount about culture even if you don't speak the language. You will oftentimes encounter people in foreign countries, depending where. If you're more rural, there's less of a chance they'll speak English, depending on the country. But in bigger cities, especially, you'll find people who speak English, and you'll be able to understand the culture through conversation. But by understanding their language, speaking to them in their language, you will understand more of the culture and perhaps even get an invitation to explore the local landscape with them. Can't tell you how many times in China, for example, locals invited me out to just insane displays of hospitality. Just because I
That's
was
so cool.
pushing myself to speak a few words in Mandarin, to pushing myself to learn what I could to communicate with them.
And you ingratiated yourself with them, and then they just opened up, and they
Yeah,
just took you in. Yeah,
insane.
I've had similar experiences like that too in Alaska and stuff, where people would just invite me in their home, and it was just an amazing experience. I talk about it to this day. Um, Christian Hufalo says, as Tony Bourdain said, don't eat and drink at the hotel. Find out where the people who work at the hotel do their eating and drinking, then go there.
I think that's a good tip.
Yeah, that is a good tip. Let's see here. Janaina I think as a Brazilian from South Brazil that lives in Rio, I must say that all those impressions can be completely different depending on the part of Brazil you're at. We have several countries in one, surely fun and a cultural variety. Great show, you guys. Yeah, I think she's taking issue with my story about the person I know who was waiting in the lobby for the Brazilian. I think in that story too, what I forgot to say is that the person that was coming to meet them, the Brazilian, had a family her neighbor had an emergency or something, and she was helping her neighbor out, and but prioritized that relationship over the business relationship that she had, and that was an idea of the cultural value hierarchy.
And Ben, you know what's so interesting to Janaina's point is that there are so many different aspects of Brazil. There's so many different countries in one, like she's saying. Recently, I went to the south of Brazil, like Florianopolis, in like on this, like around the Santa Catarina area, and I had never been there before. And the physical makeup is different. Like the skin complexion is different. Where people, it's more German and Eastern European ancestry. Versus other cities like Salvador that have more are more tied to African ancestry and mix of Portuguese. So Brazil is a big country with and to her point with lots of different variety. It's a very
These comments are so fascinating, and just wants me like makes me want to book a trip right now. Nicole says Airbnb experiences rock, personalized tours with a local guide for almost anything you can think of. Yeah.
that's an excellent idea.
Blah blah car is a car sharing app. You rent a seat in the driver's logo. So if you rent a seat in the driver's logo, do you have any say so of where the driver's going, or you're just like, hey, can I ride with you? Is that seat taken? I mean, it's how do you? It's gotta. I mean, how does that work? I don't even know. I need
Yeah,
more
I'm
information.
wondering. I'm wondering if that's almost Nicole. I'm thinking maybe that's like an Uber or a Lyft, but instead of being intra-city, it would be intercity. Would that be something like a Florence to a Venice? Someone's going
Yeah,
there
like
and
you're
you
like you're
hop a ride
traveling.
on there. That's a cool concept.
Yeah, they have that here too. It's called roadie here. Roadie, but I think it might be for cargo. Like, hey, I need my dresser needs to be in Kansas. Oh, I'm driving to Kansas to see my aunt. I'll take it, or whatever. But you probably could do it with a person too. That's interesting. Blah blah car. That's funny. That's a funny name. Let's see here. Aaron Flores said, I made a Welcome to Dallas ebook solely based on this topic. My foodies, friends, and I put a list of local hidden gems. Then we take clients to my spots. They love it. I've seen some of Aaron's spots. The barbecue looks phenomenal. Some of
And
the Mexican food as well.
Ben, I want to touch on Aaron's point. I think he makes what I'm drawing out of that is something really interesting. Culture isn't just like we can't just say, oh, someone doesn't know U.S. culture. We have to dive a little bit deeper because I think there are regional differences in our culture too. And someone coming to the Northeast is going to have a very different experience than someone in the West Coast, right? So Aaron's taking the time to curate an experience for folks going to Texas, specifically Dallas, and we can get specific even into the city. And that's what I think is fascinating, and just another point that I think that moving forward, there may be a need for cross cultural to expand even more detail. So not just giving U.S. trainings anymore, but let's talk about overall U.S. values when people are coming here. But let's talk more specifically. Let's train on regional differences too, and the things you need to understand in different regions and different states, different cities.
Excellent points. This is getting me thinking now. If I didn't have like young children all over, I might actually volunteer to be one of these people, right? Like I mean, like Aaron saying, where come and I'll show you. Like 'cause I live in Detroit now. Come and I'll show you Detroit, because seems like a really great way to meet cool people, and then an excuse to go out and show people stuff. And it's always more fun showing your city off to people. Like you can go out in your city all the time, but going out in your city with people that have never been there before, and it's their first time, and everything's new and exciting and like really cool, and then they're bringing their experiences, and now you're making these friendships, and you're being a part of a very special moment in their life. Like I go out on a Friday night. Is that special? No. But if I go on Friday night with someone who's never been in the city, it's super special to them, and now that's special for me too. You know?
Which is awesome. It's that shared experience, and it's that giving nature that you have, Ben. Right? You want people to feel comfortable. You want to share that experience, and I
And
definitely
that
value that
happiness and
about
that
you.
love, right?
Yeah, it's all
Yeah,
about that. It's all about that love, really, and being curious and sharing that.
it is. And then Nicole goes on to explain blah blah car. Yes, you arranged it beforehand. She
Okay,
says she went from Amsterdam to Brussels on one trip.
awesome.
Wow, that's pretty cool. I mean,
And you
so
know,
I think so many people are scared to do that, right?
yeah, yeah, and you know, I'm pulling out the potential value. Nicole could probably speak to her experience. She could definitely speak to her experience better than me, of course. But my thought would be that by doing that, you get seats in the local car. You're almost guaranteed to start a conversation. Whereas if you purchased a plane ticket or a bus ticket, you're probably less likely to interact with those people. So by having this shared experience, there could be really the impetus to interact and learn more about these people, about where they're coming from, their story, and their culture.
Yeah. Um, people are digging this topic. And then Janaina says, no, actually, unfortunately, Brazilians are often late. That's funny. Thank you. That's so funny. Let's see here. Guy Lambert, how are you getting your GQ haircuts with stay at home in place? Just lots of product, bro. Lots of product, man. I took it real tight on the side a long time ago, and lots of product. How have you been dealing with the COVID cuts, Rob?
Just doing the best I can to clean up where I can without trying to make a mess of anything, but really been struggling to quite a large capacity without the ability to go to a barbershop.
I was thinking like that day when you walk into your barber, I feel like everybody's gonna walk in there with their head down, like really ashamed, like not want to talk about it. It's like gonna be a confessional, like barbershop confessions, where people just
Totally.
walk in and be like, "Bro, don't even talk about it. Just make it go away."
Yeah, it's going to be an insane day. And the influx that we're going to see into these barbershops when they open up, you know.
Oh my gosh. Eric says I'm from the Bronx. I can't figure out Brooklyn. He says I'm from the Bronx. I can't figure out Brooklyn. That's
There you
funny.
go.
You're so funny, Eric. Eric's hilarious. Eric wants that hat right there, and he can't have it because I spent $150 to keep my own hat in a Mood for Hunger auction. Man, sucker born every minute. Lindy Chapman says biggest pain point finding trusted local resources, including an agent that understands the challenges of finding not only a house or apartment, but schools,
Mm.
community, career resources. Do you find so she's coming from a relocation real estate standpoint, and she's talking about the importance. I think she's talking about the importance of that service provider, that real estate agent, for instance, in this specific instance, having the cultural awareness maybe to help the person, the expat, navigate um, right neighborhood, schools, career resources. Do you see cultural training opportunities on the service provider side in mobility?
You know what? That's a fascinating question. I hadn't even considered that prior. But that's an excellent point, right? Because I don't believe that the folks showing the houses to these, or in charge of the experience of finding housing, I don't believe they undergo a cultural training but they're getting people from lots of different countries coming in to try to help them, figure out where to live. But I think there would be such great value in that, or having at least somewhat of a briefing before on what kind of client is coming in, because the needs of someone from Jamaica might be very different than the needs of someone from Ecuador,
And
right?
understanding what their expectations are, because in Jamaica there's a lot of private schools or something, and so they're automatically thinking private Catholic school or something versus some or they're a school that anyway. So there's these ideas that they're coming in with, and that you want to try to. I'm guessing that you want to try to accommodate, as well as, I mean, housing styles, right? If you're coming from Singapore, you're used to living in an apartment, and you might be an executive. Maybe you don't want a big house.
How much space you're used to. And Ben, there's even the aspect of how expensive is it? And in some cultures where, specifically relationship based, when we talk about respect and saving face, it is extremely important to not have a more expensive, humble abode than your superior.
Very interesting. That's very interesting. Let's see here. I think we have some. some of our last questions and comments here. And
Sure.
I do want to hear about this book idea, and I want to hear about your passions here. So
Sure.
I want to get to that. Mena says, "Are you enrolling the employees who are returning to their home country after long-term assignments to culture trainings?
So
Return culture trainings. Like you've been gone a long time. I know you've, I know you, I know you might think you're, an American, but a lot's changed over the last 10 years.
you know what? Yeah. Well, in terms of repatriations,
Yeah,
that's an excellent question too, and we find it really it depends on the company and what benefits they're deciding to offer to the employees. I would say that probably has been seen by most companies as, like, if we're looking at, Ben, as you and I were talking about, how cultural training overall is undervalued or it's overlooked, and then I think even more so on the coming back home side, because you would assume, oh, this person knows, they're from here. But I also think there's great value in that, because this person may have been living abroad for, what, 3, 5, 10 years, and doesn't really remember what it's like, and or how has this country or this region even changed in that point of time.
right. And they've changed to grow into that culture that they're in and coming back. Gary Connerly is one of the best examples of this that I can think of. He says one of the biggest challenges of my life was returning from Peru after 10 years and trying to fit in here in the U.S. Great points. Don't forget about the kids who are on assignment. So Gary's story, if you haven't heard him tell it, and he was also on Love and Relo several weeks ago, he went to Peru as a child, grew up in Peru his formative years. His parents were missionaries, came back to the U.S. I'm going to butcher the dates here, but let's say he went down there when he was 10 and came back, or say he went down there when he was 8 and came back when he was 18. Let's say I forget the exact dates, but you can imagine, right? So now he comes back to the U.S. and it sounds like he had quite the time trying to assimilate when he came back.
Yeah, no, and Gary's point actually brings me to something I think there's a lot of value in mentioning. Relocations are not just about the employee. And it is not just about the employee at the workplace. It is about the employee's life. You are asking a human to move to a whole new place where they potentially know nobody. That means that you need to support that employee. You need to support their kids, as Gary said. You need to support the spouse, because when Ben, I'm sure you're familiar with the term "a happy wife is a happy life," right?
I've heard of it.
Okay, fair. If
I
you're
think I
if
had a
you're
therapist tell me that one time.
if you have a spouse or kids that don't know how to get the resources they need, or how to interact socially, find things to do, oftentimes spouse can't work, you are in for a problematic
Right.
situation.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. I
And,
mean,
that's the value of cultural training for the whole family.
right.
You know,
Yeah. Is that a common benefit that the whole family gets it?
you
Or is
know,
it usually just for the employee?
when we're looking at that, it's always, when the decision is made, of course, the employee always gets it. It's a case by case basis, but I would like to say that from what I've seen, most companies the majority will extend it to the family as well, at least to the spouse. And I would encourage companies to extend it to everyone, really.
Yeah. So, Robert, you mentioned before about Lindy Chapman says, happy house, happy spouse.
Yeah,
That's funny.
that's real.
Let me see. Soledad Aguirre says, arriving 15 minutes after time is not being late. It is courtesy time. That's funny.
Yeah, well, yeah, the
Yeah.
perspective on it.
So here in the U.S., in the military, they say 15 minutes early is on time. On time is late. So you can imagine. I mean, a U.S. military person and Soledad might just totally miss each other because, at that point, who knows?
Yeah,
So I want to talk about this real quick. So you mentioned a book you're writing right now. Tell me about the book.
sure. So, um, as we've discussed a little bit of my life story, I've been so fortunate to take all these extended trips. I've done some travel that's been point A to point B, but a lot of it has been very unstructured, um, flexible, long, anywhere from 5 weeks to 14 and a half months, from different regions around the world to an actual world trip. And I was always sort of challenged by my friends, my family, or I was always questioned, like, what are you doing? Like, how are you doing that? So by me taking these trips and
I
seeing,
was just about to ask you, how'd you pay for that?
yeah, no, that's a whole nother story. And a lot of that was just like putting together all, there's got to be a plan, right? And a lot of it was working really hard, saving up the money, because there's two ways to do it. Some folks make enough to start the trip and then they might work during on an extended trip. I was always the type to want to really um, save first and then go do it and just fully immerse myself in the experience. Um, now,
Yeah.
so basically, the thought was, I've got these incredible experiences I've had, these things I've learned about myself, the world, cultures. I think it's time for me to share that knowledge with the world because I don't want to be sitting with it by myself. Um, I want to share these wonderful experiences with the world and show folks who've always wanted to do that, to get out of their comfort zone and travel, whether it's a 2-week vacation or it's a year-long thing, to motivate them and show them that it is totally achievable. It may not be the norm, but that doesn't matter because you don't have to follow the norm. It is totally achievable. And with the right resources, you can make it happen and you can learn amazing things about yourself, relationships, the world.
Yeah, I want to. Yeah, I want to do that. I got a family now. I got to figure out how to make it work. But it's definitely on the list of things to do. Robert, we've already gone over time, and I appreciate you being so gracious with your time. Is there anything you want to share with folks that are watching today?
Um, we touched on a lot of awesome things today, Ben. I would say, everybody, just keep spreading the love. Be culturally informed. Be curious. Um, and just be kind, right? Because right now we're really going through tough times. So any kind of support you can lend to somebody who's in need, that will come back tenfold to you.
Awesome. Great message. Robert, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you, everybody that
Welcome.
tuned in today to Love and Real. We had a whole bunch of people. You guys were super active in the chat. I can't thank you enough for that. It makes my job super easy. Plus, it makes the conversation that much better. So, this has been a lot of fun. It's really got me wanting to travel abroad, eat some crazy food and go take a blah blah car ride seat from somewhere to somewhere. Who knows? Get lost, right? This has been exciting. I always learn something on these shows. So thank you so much, Robert. I appreciate you being here with us. Everybody who's watching, tomorrow we have episode 1 of Global Mobility Jeopardy. And Nicole Barilli, who's been super active in the chat today with the comments, is going to co host it with me. She's made some fantastic questions. It's our first episode. We're going to try it out. We got some great guests, actually. We have Ann Knapp from Global Mobility Solutions going to be a contestant. Another contestant is going to be Stephen Hoffman from Global Tax Network. And our third contestant is going to be Brian Keating from DwellWorks, actually. So we got a great lineup for everybody tomorrow. We're going to try it out. Bring a cocktail because it's going to be fun. And if it's not fun, having a cocktail makes it that much better. So I can't wait to see everybody tomorrow. Tomorrow's Friday, y'all. Can't wait. This is going to be a lot of fun. Rob, thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, brother. My pleasure. And thanks for everyone tuning in and excited for Global Mobility Jeopardy tomorrow.
Yeah, it should be good. Cool.